part of your handicapping process is what did we pick up from week 2? You kind of look backwards and then move forward. You were talking about the box scores, and this week, the box scores lined up perfectly with the outcomes.
So this is terrible. So I'll use an example of what I'm looking for. If you watch the Colorado State game and you stayed up late, by the way, Colorado had the ball first in the first and second overtimes. I don't know if anyone heard, did Coach Prime take the ball to start the second overtime? That's a huge mistake. I digress. Colorado State should have won the game. Box score-wise, they were up like 200 yards for most of the game. They clearly dominated for most of the game. And that's what you're looking for, is a phony final score like that. I don't have them. You look at the final scores this week, and they're pretty darn accurate depiction of what actually happened, even to the extent of, like, Tampa Bay dominated the Bears. But they're only going to win by 3. And I was going to say, that's a phony final that landed on the number. Yeah. Nope, pick 6. Tampa should have won by 10, and they did win by 10. I think the one maybe that stood out was Atlanta only won by 1, didn't cover, and they did dominate the overall yardage by 200-plus yards. So probably, if anything, even though they don't cover, we would upgrade Atlanta for that performance, I believe. But normally I have 4 games where I'm like, well, this final score had nothing to do with what happened in the field, and that wasn't the case this week in the NFL.
When you look, did you have a take on McVay? I'm sorry,
no, please.
Just wanted to ask about one of the big talking points coming out of that 49ers-Rams game, Steve Fezzik, was McVay kicking the field goal as time expired. Obviously, a winner if you had 7.5, a push on the 7. Did you have a take on McVay kicking it there, Steve?
It's correct to do so. If you have a 0.0001% chance of winning doing something, and you have a 0% of not doing it, you should always do it. So I get it. There's like 4 seconds left and clock expired. But the point is there were 6 seconds left. Then you kick the field goal. There's 2 seconds left. Somehow you recover an onside kick. It's not going to happen, but it could happen. So, mathematically, he has to be thinking the entire drive. As soon as we get in field goal range, we kick the field goal, we onside kick, and we Hail Mary. And he stayed true to that. And hey, it doesn't hurt you on playoffs. I know it's like the 7th tiebreaker point differential. There's no disadvantage to do it. And it's not like the 49ers are going to be like, I can't believe you kicked a field goal on us. I'll go back to Sam Wyche back in the 80s, the Bengals coach. One time he beat the Houston Oilers 61-7. This is the opposite now. They asked him, he kicked a field goal with 3 seconds left. He said, why? They asked him, why did you do that against the Oilers? He responded, I didn't think we had time to get it into the end zone.
I remember that game vividly. But, you mentioned it. That's what I was talking about earlier. I said, Steve, people are looking at it from a betting standpoint. That was the first thing I brought up is actually as a tiebreaker, the playoff procedure, one of the points that has to be taken into consideration. I want to ask you, in terms of adjustments on teams, I love the point you brought up for maybe people that may not be as well-versed on what's a legitimate score as opposed to a phony score. The Colorado State-Colorado game is a perfect example of it. CSU dominated minus all the late hits that they had in that game. But when you make an adjustment potentially on a power rating, what is kind of like your norm that you might adjust a team, and what is the largest upgrade or downgrade you can recall ever having on a team or two?
Sure. It's a great question. Obviously, like a quarterback injury can be part of it. So exactly. Cincinnati's going to take, it's going to dive bomb because of poor performance with the punt return touchdown and Burrow being hurt, of course. But usually week 1, week 2, even if a team's terrible, if they have stability from last year's team, 1-point adjustment. Even if they're absolutely awful, but if there's not stability. So look at Carolina. We don't know how good Young will be. Yeah. So I'm willing to make more aggressive changes in my power ratings up to 1.5. Just eyeballing it, though, I did lower the Jets 1.5 because I think that the word is out now. I know that nice touchdown to Garrett Wilson, but aside from that, terrible quarterbacking. And I think that unless they can get a quarterback, the whole locker room is going to divide offense versus defense. But I only raised the Cowboys 1 point. So that's an example where I think the Jets, until they get a quarterback, are going to be a downbound train. And I don't want to be betting on these guys. And the market agrees with me because now I see that the Jets, despite the media guys wanting to debate, are they still a contender, without Aaron Rodgers? Contender, they're catching 3 at home against New England. This team's going to win 6 games. Come on.
Steve, I'm going to throw a random matchup from yesterday. You can go ahead and give me your notes. You can tell me the adjustment of either team as far as your power ratings, just to give a better an idea of what a professional handicapper like yourself takes from a matchup. Let's start in Tennessee. The Chargers losers in overtime, 27-24.
Yeah, Chargers are going to Charger. Dead even game, 342 to 341 yards. It doesn't get much closer than that. I lowered the Chargers by half a point. I raised the Titans by half a point, not because I think the Titans should have won, but I think it was a dead even game, and the fact that that spread was where it was with the Chargers being the clear cut 2.5 to 3 point favorites. I thought it was a worthy of an upgrade. Tiny for the Titans, lower the Chargers.
Okay, a shootout in the D. Seattle, 37-31 winner over the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, that was a wild game back and forth. Seattle, I did not actually adjust at all. Detroit's won the yards per play, 6.5 to 5.9. Warning, danger, math. They won the yardage. So I thought it was more about the 0-3 turnover differential, Patrick, for your Detroit Lions being why they lost the game than getting outplayed.
Divisional matchup, Baltimore. A winner in Cincinnati, 27-24, Steve.
So I raised Baltimore by a half. I don't want to raise them more than that because they just keep getting more and more injured. I lowered the Bengals by 1. Now, that doesn't even account for the Burrow injury. I think the fact that the Bengals only stayed in the game because of the punt return, this actually was a little bit of a phony final. I take that back. Baltimore really should have won this game by 10. If I look at the statistics, the Bengals could be in some real trouble this year.
Okay, Steve, the Giants end up coming back down 21 at the half. I want to get into the game and how you adjusted the Giants in Arizona as well. But first, some breaking news here on Sharp Money. Looks like the Schultz report is reporting Giants running back Saquon Barkley is expected to miss 2 to 3 weeks with a sprained right ankle. So there's the news on Barkley. The Giants a 31-28 winner over Arizona, Steve.
So the stats-wise say the final score was accurate, but obviously with the Giants down the 28-7. And by the way, kudos in a week where a lot of teams made the wrong decision to go for 2. Arizona was up 19 in that game, and they went for 2, up 19. How sharp was that? That's what got them to overtime. So a good decision by them. I raised Arizona a half. I lowered the Giants by half because the stats are a little bit phony because the Arizona got too conservative, and the Giants got lots of offense down big, and they did pull it out. But then you lower the Giants another 1 for Barkley being out, so now you have to lower them 1.5 points.
Mr. Shaw, reaction. Saquon Barkley looks like he's going to be sitting for 2 to 3 weeks. You know what, Amal? I think that's probably good news. The reaction from Barkley on the sideline kind of looked like he's used to big-time injuries. You thought it might be a little bit more dire.
I did when he slammed his helmet after the injury. By the way, I don't know if you guys saw the play, but, man, you could tell he got roughed up on the play. I wasn't expecting it to be an ankle injury. Thought it might have been something else, but this is a big blow. Now you go to San Francisco. I thought this is why the Giants had to win this game, Patrick, against the Cardinals. It's going to be a really tough spot against San Francisco on the road. They're going to stay out west, head north to Santa Clara. But this is not an easy schedule when you look at it. Then you have the Seahawks coming in on Monday Night Football, which is good because you've got the Thursday to the Monday wraparound there. So that gives you an extended amount of 4 days plus the regular 7. So good spot there. And Miami Dolphins are trending well. You're at the Dolphins at the Buffalo Bills on a Sunday Night Football. So that first 6 weeks of the season, you're probably going to lose these games with Saquon Barkley. Now it almost feels like a foregone conclusion to a certain extent, but the Giants could still have them in time to make a good push.
Fez, you got a minute. Take us the break with Kansas City and Jacksonville. Kansas City, a 17-9 winner on the road. Go ahead, Steve.
Boy, Jacksonville looks like a paper tiger until they get their O-line back together. I know they've got their best lineman suspended for 4 games, and they held Kansas City to 17. So they played very well defensively and just couldn't muster any offense. Makes you wonder about them being a paper tiger and a phony contender. I would say like Detroit and Jacksonville were like the 2 hot teams that we're not so hot on anymore after that game. By the way, I do have Kansas City moving up in my power ratings, tied with Dallas. 49ers, my best team right now in the NFL.
A bunch of unders in week 1, and then we just started soaring over the totals. Looking for the numbers. So far, we're 12-2 to the over as far as totals NFL week 2. What do you attribute that to?
You know, you always wonder if the NFL doesn't send out a memo whenever there's a really low-scoring week that's like, we don't need all these offensive holding calls, and maybe we should emphasize more defensive pass interference. call me a conspiracy guy, but after that really low-scoring week one, there sure was a whole lot more scoring. Now, a big part of it was the weather. Remember, we had so many games on the Eastern Seaboard that were played in rain in Cleveland, and I think that absolutely combined with the lack of preseason threw off the timing of a whole lot of teams. A lot easier to play football on a fast track in Arizona than, say, New York Giants in a driving rainstorm. Yes.
Boys, it's interesting because I mentioned we've got the overs cashing 12-2, and then we've seen two totals tonight, Amal Shaw. New Orleans, Carolina, it's come down a little bit. We're seeing mostly 39.5s on the board. And then Cleveland, Pittsburgh off the opener come down a little bit as well. I'm seeing a couple 38.5s out there.
It doesn't surprise me a little bit by the move in the Saints game, simply because when you look at it, you've got a rookie quarterback making his second career start. We know historically guys first overall, the struggles that they had minus the Derek Carr win going back to this century. And then on top of it, you look at how well the Saints defense has performed last year, carrying over into the first week of the season against the Tennessee Titans. Patrick, they probably gave up 12 points if Mike Vrabel goes for it on fourth down and they don't convert that. So I think this New Orleans team is going to be one that you see until we see them give up points or their offense show overwhelming ability to be highly scoring. That games in there, they're going to either be bet down or you're going to see much lower numbers on them.
Fez, I see you chomping. Go ahead and jump in on the totals tonight.
You know, I don't have much on it other than if we go 12-2 to the over and we're seeing two low totals that aren't getting bet up, there's probably for a good reason. If you bet under, it wouldn't be surprised if you went 1-1 with a chance at 2-0. I would lean unders. If you can get 20s on the first half, that under 20 is a monster whenever you have a 39 total because it's so often – it's 7-3 with 4 minutes to go in the first half. And you know what? This happened with Atlanta Green Bay. So it was 7-3 almost at the end of the first half. And you needed is that Kim for the kicker for Atlanta had to miss the extra point to keep it under 19.5. So that 20 is such a key number. But I think the 20s are long gone on both games.
Amal, looked like you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, no, the other thing is you mentioned the 20. I think why it's such a crucial factor is if you have a drive that stalls out inside the 35-yard line, let's just be real here. These kickers nowadays are just like machines from inside of 52 yards. If you cross the 37-yard line, you feel like a 54-yard field goal or less is going to be almost automatic. But again, you need to be able to finish that drive off, and you get one of those drives that doesn't get completed, to Steve's point. Now it's an extra possession that requires a field goal to be made to even worst case scenario be a push. And so from a numerical standpoint, Steve knows this extremely well, Patrick, it just gives you such an advantage. If you get now in this game it's not applicable, but let's say you have a 40 and a half total. You get a first half of 20 and a half. Obviously, ideally you want 21, but that's not going to be plausible. 20 and a half, such a great number. People overlook that. Yeah, on paper it looks like they're going to go down. They're going to score left, right, and center. Jacksonville and Kansas City. What do we wind up with in that game? 26 points, I think, something ridiculously low. So many times in the NFL, it's different than college where one play can wipe out a total very quickly.
Fez, let's have a little fun. I haven't seen you in a while. We've done this for years and years together. A day in the life. People love you and your lifestyle and, like, you know, especially during football season where everything turns up to 100. Let's start when you woke up yesterday morning. We'll get to the openers last night and to kind of analyzing the box scores this morning, which you found quite interesting. But let's wake up on Sunday with Fezzik and kind of walk through the day yesterday.
Yeah, so I usually wake up around 7 a.m. and I kind of go into follower mode in terms of I got guys that are researching the props. So my buddy, the Hitman's great at it. So he's sending me over various suggested prop bets for to play Cortland Sutton under. We lost that one. You think he won like 6 of his other 7. And so I'm surfing around, and it's hard in Vegas. Patrick, we are so far behind in Las Vegas in terms of putting up props on quarterbacks, skill position players, running backs, wide receivers, and a lot of them just aren't available. And I don't live on the East Coast where a lot more of those books are fantasy-based, and they put up a lot more product to be able to play. Certainly looking at line movements across the board, I got to be honest, I had a couple of playback losers where I had loaded up. For instance, I had played Dallas during the summer -2.5 against the Jets, and I had played a -3, and I had all these Dallas teasers, and I'm like, I'm getting a little too heavy on Dallas. So I see money then coming back on the Jets, and I went ahead and played the Jets, I think, +9, grabbing rogue numbers right before kickoff, pretty much doing that, you know, throughout the day. And once the games start, in the morning games, I'm live wagering throughout. And I got to tell you this whole change in format is disastrous because the latency. I'm not watching the game till I'm literally 60 seconds behind. I've given up betting live other than during TV timeout. So be aware. You hear all these people talking about, I'm going to bet on what the next play will be. Well, guess what? The next play's already been run, buddy, as has the play after. So good luck building a model where you're trying to get people to bet whether the next free throw or the kick's going to be made because you're just too far behind.
Could you expound a little bit on the in-game and the live wagering? Because back in the day, you used to have the bunny ears, so you wouldn't have the latency, and you used to talk about focusing on one game in particular when you're in-game betting. Has there been a difference as far as your approach?
Well, ideally, you have somebody at the stadium that's like feeding you what's going on. I'll give an extreme example. I apologize if I'm giving away the store. Ideally, you want somebody who's attending a game in person. They can tell you who's going to get the football to start the game. So think about this. For years, like these experts, like Clucko the Chicken, would tell you whether to bet heads or tails. And it drove me crazy because the coin toss is actually a pretty strong advantage play on a high total game. But who cares what the coin toss says? It's who gets the ball. So whoever wins the coin toss in the NFL almost always defers. The other team starts with the ball. Boom. If you've got about a minute there where if you could bet that team to score first, that team in the first quarter, even that team in the first half, not nearly as strong as the other two, that's a big advantage play bet. And so I'm scrambling oftentimes from 9:56 to 10 a.m. just trying to get down, and it's harder and harder to play bets like that. Just to give you an idea of pulling back the curtain, the things that pros do, and this is why I hear all the time like bookmakers are hugging pro bettors and they're all friends and everything. Not in my world. My buddies, they're not in the Sports Betting Hall of Fame, any of them, and all the bookmakers hate them, so they'll never vote them into the Sports Betting Hall of Fame because they're making bets like who's going to score first because they know that the Giants are getting the ball, for instance.
It's a great point. You know, you have certain situations you think, hey, it's going to be advantageous if a team has the ball first. Better odds to be able to go down and score, obviously, than the other side there. It's an excellent point you bring up there. Steve, just want to ask you in terms of that. You mentioned prop plays and some of the other things. Is it always a situation where you're either going to play them early in the week or very, very late? Or what kind of helps you maybe get involved in something Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, as opposed to just Sunday before kickoff or Sunday after a line becomes available?
Well, in terms of bet per minute, the highest amount would be when the openers come up or 2 minutes before the game kicks off because that's your last kick at the can, your last chance to wager. But in terms of throughout the week, and this isn't well publicized, but it makes a lot of sense. It's like a scavenger hunt, and oftentimes you don't have the clue, so you can't find the gold coin without the clue. And then the coach comes out and says, you know what, point of emphasis, we're really going to go ahead and feed this guy more. And then as soon as that quote's out there, well, of course his rushing total is going to go up. Now, maybe it's a subterfuge. Maybe the coach is lying, but more often than not, you're going to see his rush yards go up from 43 to 51. And whoever's working the hardest on that Thursday morning when that quote comes out is going to get the over 43 and have the best of it in terms of bets. So people approach it like a final exam. I'm just going to study all week long, and then Sunday I've got I've done all my calculus problems, and now I'm going to go bet everything. Well, what good is that going to do you tonight? Like New Orleans Saints, let's go to that 3.5. If you show me, Fez, I really like the Saints, I laid 3.5, I'd just be like, you're fired. You have no idea what you're doing. It's a Monday Night Football game that's steamed upward, and now you're going to lay 3.5 and give me the reasons. I don't even care anymore what the reasons are. There's no way you should be laying 3.5. Now, the question is, when it hits 3.5 at select spots, do we play the Panthers? Probably, but that's just pulling back the curtain and stuff. But like this morning, 7 a.m., the circa went to -3 even money on the Saints. Nothing wrong with that. That was a good bet.
Did you take anything, just curious, like past and present? Last night's standalone game, Belichick and McDaniels. Is there something that stood out to you? Because Belichick's been getting crushed by the advanced analytics crowd. Was there something that stood out to you as far as missteps?
Yeah, I think Belichick is. I hate to say this because I always had him rated the best coach, but I think he had the best people working for him, and he would make really good analytics decisions. He was terrible last night. So you score early in the fourth quarter to go down 8, and he chose to kick. I disagree. I would go for 2. It's fine. I don't care. But then there's like 5 minutes left, and he scores again to cut it to 8. And I'm like, well, here we go. I'm certain now he's going to go for 2. Everyone knows you go for 2. I'm not going to bore everyone with the decision tree and why you win 62% of the time. And yet he trots out the kicker and kicks the extra point. And then Chris Collinsworth, who owns like part of an analytics company, what is going on? Then when the Patriots are driving at the end of the game, he says, boy, should they go for 2 in the win if they get in the end zone? It's like, oh, yeah, that's real sharp. Let's go for 2 after the second touchdown. It's completely wrong.
Amal, do you want to set it up what we were discussing during the break and how sometimes the box and kind of put a bow on that Kansas City-Jacksonville game, how sometimes a box can be a little misleading?
Yeah, so Steve was talking about in the previous segment, which you asked him a great question in terms of how he quantifies the games. And he mentioned games that he thought where the score was a little bit phony or a bit misleading. And so in the Jacksonville-Kansas City game, the final score was 17-9, but the Kansas City Chiefs took a knee at the 1-yard line, wound up at the at the 6-yard line after 3 plays. But so Steve and I were talking about this, and one of the things he said is it was a 54-yard completion by Sky Moore on 3rd down and 6 with 2 minutes, just I think 2:06 or something like that, just outside the 2-minute warning, Patrick. And it goes for a 54-yard completion, and it's a bit deceptive because, as Steve alluded to, it was a situation where the Jags, whether they give up 6 yards or 66 yards, is going to be the same scenario.
Yeah, so good job by the Jaguars saying, you know what, if you're going to get this first down, you're going to have to throw over us. And Kansas City said, okay, we will. But we really shouldn't credit them 50 yards in their passing game. They should probably credit them for a nice 10-yard completion and nothing more. Yes.
Okay, let's get to Monday night. And Steve, we'll talk first about the machinations as far as the number. I'll tell you where we are presently. You talk about the line movement and where you sit for these 2 games. We'll start with New Orleans and Carolina. DraftKings right now showing New Orleans lane 3, $1.15 on the juice, and a total of 39.5.
All right, so I'm going to tell you how to bet both sides of this game. All right, so I would wait, shop around till post. I think you'll see a 3.5 pop up. I might have to lay minus 115. I was just at a local book here in town, and I saw a 3.5 lay 15 on Carolina. That's with the dog. I'd hold out for the 3.5. This is going to be controversial. I'm going to give you a bet that I'm never going to give the rest of the year. I'm going to tease through a 0. I'm going to take the the New Orleans Saints. We're going to tease that minus 3 extra vig, but the extra vig doesn't matter when we're teasing. They don't count it in their pricing. I'm going to take a 6.5 point teaser, and I'm going to flip it through basically both 3s, and I'm going to take the Saints plus 3.5. I need something to pair it with, and now here's the beauty. I'm going to pair the Saints to the Saints. I'm going to tease the Saints week 3. They're a 1.5 point dog to Green Bay. I'm going to tease them up to 8. Now you see the correlation. If the Saints kick butt and do well tonight, there's a good chance that Green Bay line could come down to pick them, never to be teasable again. Thus, I get a correlated teaser. I know we don't like to tease through the 0, but we're teasing basically through both 3s. That's the first and only time you're going to see me all year long tease through a 0.
Patrick, I got a couple of follow-up questions. First of all, one thing that Steve brought up, I think it's an excellent point that people need to pay attention to. There's nothing wrong with making a play on a teaser on a Sunday night or a Monday night and playing it with the game next weekend. So many people refuse to do that because they're like, I got to wait 7 days. Where the hell are you going? I mean, at the end of the day, if you've got a play you love, just make it based on what you think is the best option to win. Now, I'm going to need you to explain why, because so many people are adamant against it. I don't subscribe to that theory, but because I think there are situations where you can do it. Explain why you choose in this game to go ahead and tease through 0.
Basically, when I play a teaser, I need to win like 75% of the time. That's a big mountain. But let me explain how I'm getting there. This line is essentially 3.25 already. It's not 3. It's 3.25. That's the extra vig on the minus 3. So how often am I going to, if I bet it straight minus 3.5, am I going to win the teaser? Well, it's going to land on exactly 3, either team winning about 15% of the time. And it could land 1 or 2. That's 4 other numbers, either team by 1 or 2. I'm getting real close to that 25%. Probably not quite getting there. So maybe the first leg of the teaser is a little iffy, almost break even, maybe a little negative, but that correlation's dynamite. Because if New Orleans covers their teaser, then they got a real good chance also, to look good. And all of a sudden, the teaser the next week becomes even stronger. So it's the correlation that drives this ship, if you will.
I was getting flashbacks when Steve Fezzik mentioned correlative betting. I don't know if you still have the CDs from the seminar you and your buddy did laying around, but Steve sent me it must have been 8 hours of sports betting content on CDs. Now, this is years and years ago. Do you remember what you called it? And I wonder if you still have those available.
Yeah, my buddy Kevin O'Neill, great follower. I'm at Extra Half Point, I believe. He went ahead and produced those. I'll check and see if there is still in stock, if you will. But core people, don't play parlays to have fun. The reason play parlays circumvent limits. You see a really off number with a really low limit, like some NASCAR pricing or something. Parlay to some NFL games to get down more on it. Correlations are fantastic. And to get you can play certain parlays because you can get a number you can't get anywhere else. This week, I played parlay cards in Vegas. I played Carolina because on the card, it was printed plus 3.5. I couldn't get 3.5, so that's why I played the parlay card, with other things. But I'll give an example of a correlation that you never probably even thought about. Baseball, a home underdog to the under is a really good correlated parlay because think about it. If the home team wins, you're probably only going to get 8.5 innings, so you shorten the game. So if you see a home dog that you like and you like the under, it's rarely wrong to play them in a correlated parlay in baseball. Only the home team.
Okay.
Only the home team.
Okay. Let's get to the late game, or an hour after kick of New Orleans and Carolina, is Cleveland at Pittsburgh. Right now, DraftKings is showing Cleveland laying 2 and a total of 39, Fez.
So this is the picture-perfect good teaser game. You want to play at a book that has good teaser odds. DraftKings qualifies. 6-point NFL teaser, minus 120. That's as good as it gets right now. So, boom, I'm going to do the Wong teaser. By the way, I am actually friends with Stanford Wong, the guy they invented the name Wong teaser. We used to talk about in the late 90s. So we're going to tease Pittsburgh from +2 up to +8. Well, I need something to tease Pittsburgh with. I will resist the urge to play another correlated parlay. I'm just going to play a good teaser. I'm going to take the Baltimore Ravens. They're laying 8 right now to Indy. We're going to bring in Baltimore down to -2, so we're teasing through the 3, through the 7 on both these games. One favorite, one dog, and that would be my recommended bet on the Pittsburgh game.
And we throw it out all the time, so why don't you discuss, when we talk about the Wong principle as far as teasing through key numbers, can you give the audience an understanding exactly what you mean when you say the Wong tease?
Yeah, and if you're in a hurry, you're driving, go ahead and just buy Stanford Wong's book, Sharp Sports Betting. You can spend a good afternoon reading it, just the chapter on teasers. But in general, you want to tease through the corridor 3 through 7, so a +2 dog absolutely qualifies up to +8. And that's what the Steelers are here. It can be +1.5. It can be +2.5. So +2 plus or minus a half in either direction. On the favorite side, you want to tease a favorite, -8, down to -2. Again, you're going through that 3 through 7. Now, real important, you usually only want to tease home favorites. The road favorites stub their toes more, and a lot of Survivor players can tell you this, that -8 road favorites are fraught with risk compared to 8-point home favorites. The home favorites win more by a small margin, so look for a home favorite of -7.5, -8, or -8.5. And it's true, you can go to -9, but you have to play a 6.5-point teaser. You always have to bring it down to -2.5. You never tease down to -3. Warning, Will Robinson. Lots of math. I apologize.
But by the way, one thing, Patrick, I just want to add real quickly. And, the reason why I bring this up all the time is because I'm shocked at how many people are unaware. Find out the book that you're using, what the rules are on a teaser. Is a tie a loss, or is it a push and a refund on a 2-team teaser? There's so many different places that have different distinctions.
That's so important. And so if ties lose at your book, never, ever play an integer teaser. So example, let's say ties lose and Pittsburgh's +2. Well, forget that. We're going to use a 6.5-point teaser. We're going to tease the +8.5, and we're going to lay -130. We'll put them in a 6.5-point teaser, and that way there's no chance to tie. And we're going to pair it with the second leg, and we're going to take a -8 down to -1.5. We're never going to take take it down to an integer number because the integer is worthless because ties lose. They have to both end in a half.
You mentioned Survivor. How have the early returns been for one of the better tournament players in NFL betting been for Steve Fezzik so far?
Well, some would say I'm being a little wussy boy and just playing like the bigger favorite. So I'm 2-0. So far, so good. Sweated it out week 1 with Washington and Sam Howell. Cruised with the Bills. So we lost I think 30% of the field. So far, so good. And frankly, I think a lot of people are just trying. They're making this too complicated. They're trying to take underdogs to win in week 2 and the like. And it's okay to. Some people lost with Denver, and I was okay with that actually last week. But in general, survive in advance is still more important than to be really clever, because when everybody's trying to be clever, it's not optimal to be clever when you're not even taking a path that's unique. You've got 500 other people taking the same crazy path.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.